Hey guys, I'm back. I know it's been several days since I've read chapter 4, and I apologize about that. Just had a lot going on. The online classes and teaching has taken a lot out of me, and I know that several of you have been listening to the chapters and have asked me to read chapter 5. I'm going to go ahead and recap what's happened chapters 1 through 4 really quickly, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So our young dragon adventurine was living in the cave with her family. She wanted to escape and get out in the world around her, to go exploring. She found, while she was out, a little man at the bottom of the mountain who was cooking something that smelled absolutely delicious, amazing. She went over to him. He said that it was chocolate. He said some magic words, puts potion in it, and when she drank it, everything around her went black, and she woke up, and she was no longer a dragon. She is now a human with human legs. She's trying to navigate the world around her. She's trying to learn how to walk. She comes to the road and she meets Frederick and Greta, which is an older couple. They are traveling through the mountainside back to the town, the village, and they've offered Adventurine to come with them, but they want her to be the maid, the housekeeper, and take care of all of the daily duties, and she does not really want to do that. She does know that she wants to go to town to become an apprentice because she wants more chocolate. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and start chapter 5 of The Dragon with a Chocolate Heart. All right, chapter 5. By the time we'd been traveling for over an hour, my head was nodding to one side and my backside was aching on the cart's wooden bench. Greta had finished wrapping up my injured feet in cloth and was busy rolling her eyes in despair over how ignorant I was about what she called clothing. If I'd still been in my proper form, I would have snorted out gallons of smoke at the idea of caring about what humans chose to put on their little bodies. As it was, I was horribly certain that the information was going to actually matter to me soon. Unfortunately, my sleepless night on the mountainside, I had to jerk myself upright again and again to stay awake for Greta's condescending lecture. The sixth time that I shook myself awake, she heaved an exasperated sigh and tucked my head against her shoulder with a firm hand. There, she murmured. You just let yourself sleep until we get there. It's better that way for all of us, isn't it? I mumbled. There was something niggling in the back of my mind, but I couldn't catch hold of it. Some kind of warning. If only I could remember. But it was too late. The moment my eyes closed, I was swept away in a darkness into dreams of gleaming gold and jewels. I was laughing as I chased after Jasper, spilling jingling treasures everywhere. As I pounced on him, I was tearing into fresh, delicious meat that my family had just brought back from their hunt. I was listening to Grandfather laugh and laugh as Jasper and I... Adventurine! It was Grandfather's warning. The one I'd heard so many times before. How could I have forgotten it even for a moment? Never trust a human. They lie and they cheat. I jerked awake. My heart was thudding against my chest. My breathing felt fast and tight, as if I'd been running for hours. I was surrounded by humans everywhere. Tall rectangular buildings reached towards the sky to my right and to my left, and marched on in rows and rows ahead of me. As far as my eyes could follow, humans were carrying baskets and bags, bustled in crowds along the paved walkways on each side of the stony streets, and yammed noisily to each other in the horse-drawn carts that rattled past the non-stop procession. I was so heamed and I could hardly breathe. How could all these humans stand it? The hills that we'd been traveling through when I first fell asleep rose high in the distance now beyond a tall stone tower with a massive clock face that overlooked the busy human city, ticking away all the hours that I'd lost. It couldn't have been more than an hour, it couldn't have been later than 9 in the morning when I first closed my eyes. Now it looked more like mid-afternoon. And I didn't like the look of where those hours had carried me. Our cart had rolled to a stop in front of the tall red brick building with scattered squares of clear glass dotted around its front and pots of pink flowers clustered before them. From the flowers to the stickily sweet figurines set in front of the house entryway, it looked exactly like the sort of place where Greta would live. But I couldn't spot a single piece of chocolate anywhere. I didn't smell any chocolate either. As my senses prickled with danger, I heard Greta whisper to Frederick over my head, "Now, stop being so stubborn and just carry her inside." I know what she said, but by the time she wakes up, it'll be all sorted and... "I'm awake," I snarled as I sat bolt upright. I would have spread out my wings and arched my neck if I had to make myself as big and dangerous looking as possible. Instead, I narrowed my eyes into the glower as I looked from one of my treacherous companions to the other. "This isn't a chocolate house, is it?" Frederick winced and slid off the seat of the cart, turning his gaze away as if he couldn't bear to watch. But Greta smiled and wrapped her fingers around my shoulders, squeezing so tightly that I couldn't escape. As I looked into her eyes, I realized something that I'd almost forgotten. On our long journey, even without any claws or scales, humans had always been predators too. "Now, dear," her fingers tightened even more, pinching into my skin as she leaned toward me. "I know what you think you want to work in a chocolate house, but trust me, But trust me, you wouldn't last a day in one of those fine places." Sorry about that. Why, you didn't even know what shoes were until I told you. Really, no one but us would even want to hire you. And without us, you would have starved all alone in the wild. So, now that we've brought you all the way here and even shared our food and drink out of pure generosity of our hearts," she nudged me gently towards where Frederick stood on the other side of the cart, his face tilted away from us, his shoulders sagging. "It's time for you to be a good, obedient girl and pay us back. You just hop down next to Frederick and we'll all go inside where it's safe. Through that door right there." She pointed. "And you won't ever have to worry about taking care of yourself again. Do you understand that, dear?" I looked into Greta's smiling face as her fingers gripped onto my frail human shoulder through the thick green covering she lent me, and I smiled back at her. It was a smile that showed all my teeth, and my family would have recognized it in an instant. "I understand," I said sweetly. "Good girl." Her fingers finally loosened, and I leapt straight off the cart, leaving her dull green covering behind me. I landed hard on the city street, a full foot away from where Frederick waited. Sighing, she shifted toward me. He was too late. Tucking my head down, I spun around and ran as fast as my legs would take me. Weaving past carts and horses and humans alike, I'd left one safe, smothering cavern behind already. I was never going to let myself be trapped again. So she's gotten away from Frederick and Greta. Muck and horse dung covered the round, bumpy stones of the city streets, forming a stinky, sticky mess and turning my cloth-covered feet gooey within seconds. Only 20 minutes after my great escape, I had to stop running so that I could scrape off my foot coverings for the 5th time. To keep my balance, I hung on to the thick cream-colored artificial tree trunk that had been sent into the sidewalk with one of the human fancy glass lamps balanced at the top of it. It was a funny thing to put in the middle of a city. But it wasn't the strangest thing I saw as I looked around. Tall, yellow, and white buildings rose on both sides of the street, embellished like jewelry with fluttery, swirly ornaments and dotted with rows and rows of thin glass rectangles. Crowds of humans flooded in and out of the open doorways, chattering and laughing and filling their arms with more and more bags of decorated boxes. Greta's home had been halfway up a street of red brick houses, with every door shut tight against the world. The scene around me now was so different that if I hadn't seen the same massive fortress green foothills rising in the distance and the same giant clock tower sticking up in between me, I might have imagined that I'd run all the way to a different city. Horses clattered up and down the street, dragging behind them elaborate gold and black convoys that looked nothing like Greta's simple cart. Even the humans here looked different from the one in Greta's neighborhood. At least I'd learned some useful words during Greta's lecture that morning. The pale blue or yellow floor-length things worn by all the female humans, no, women, were called dresses. And they looked enormously impractical, billowing out in massive circles around the owner's legs. The men wore trousers, which looked more sensible, but Greta had been horrified that I was wearing them as a girl. Still, at least mine were scale-colored. Human trousers were so boring. The dragon culture bright colors were a source of pride, but human males have been born with different colored skin, head fur, and eyes from one another, but they'd all chosen exactly the same type of plain dark clothing, as if they were trying to blur together, like a herd of animals. I hadn't glimpsed a single bright flash of crimson or gold since I'd arrived. Worse yet, for some reason, the men around here seemed to be determined to half-strangle themselves with the elaborate white knots that they all had tied around their necks. But none of the peculiarities that I saw before me mattered nearly as much as what I smelled. There were food sellers on almost every street corner here, crying out the names of their wares over big black open ovens that stood smack in the center of the sidewalk. Fresh hot waffles smelled sweet and sugary and made me lick my lips. Baked potatoes sent up savory scents, and roasted chestnuts smelled strangely enticing. More scents drifted toward me from the open doorways up and down the streets. I was so hungry, I would have whimpered if I'd had less dignity. It had been a very long time since my cheese and milk that morning, and apparently even tiny human stomachs needed more sustenance than that. But there was something far more important than my hunger driving me now. It had been over a day since I'd tasted any chocolate. Now that I'd finally found my passion, I wasn't going to stop until I had it in my claws forever. Unfortunately, Not a single one of the yellow and white buildings around me looked as if it could be made of chocolate. And with my wreck new human nose hunting out the smell of the city's famous chocolate houses underneath all those other scents that bombarded me, from the mouth-watering smells of the cooking food to the wreck of human sweat, the strange artificial scents that the humans all seemed to shelter on top of it, and the steaming piles of droppings that the horses had left on the street. Ooh. Well, it was going to be a challenge even for a secret dragon, but I was more than ready to try. I let go of the lamp tree and set off to follow my nose, my cloth-covered feet squishing against the ground with every step. So that is the end of chapter 5, The Dragon with the Chocolate Heart. Tomorrow I will make sure that I come back and read chapter 6, The Chocolate Cup. We'll find out. It's getting pretty exciting. I wonder what's going to happen to her next. All right, I'm going to put this up on YouTube. It'll also be on our class Google Classroom. So I hope you guys are tuning in. If you have not watched chapter 1 through 4 yet, go ahead and do that. I hope you did that before you watched chapter 5. All right, you guys take care. Bye.